Meeting to order. We'll stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, roll call, please.
Jim Zarnick.
Here.
Kim Kroll.
Here.
John Schaefer.
Here.
Patricia Sims-Smirchek.
Here.
Joe Wizawati.
Present.
Wayne Pondinas.
Present.
All right, next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from the May 18th, 2023 regular scheduled meeting. Any discussion on this? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
Make a motion to approve the minutes.
Any second?
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Abstain.
And we have one abstention. Motion passes. All right, next on the hot seat is Ms. Amber Nielsen from Baker Tilly to go over the budget and our 5-year plan, and everyone should have in their packet the information.
Yep. Hi, everyone. Is this on? Yes. Okay. I'm a little short, so there we go. Okay. Hi, everyone. So you all should have this packet in your packets that has like a black face here, and it says financial management report for the municipal sewage works for St. John. So Eric Walsh and I were here a couple months ago. It was great to see you all again. I believe it was February that we were here, and we talked about preparing a 2023 budget, which we do in this report. And this is a report we do for many of our utility clients. And it really does just that. And I'll go through it here in my PowerPoint, but we looked at the 2023 budget, prepared a draft of it, and then we also do a forward-looking about 5 years out to kind of see where is the sewage works going and what are any red flags we need to address now. So again, Eric Walsh is the very tall, bald guy that you probably all have seen many times. He is out of state tonight, so he sent me. I'm the manager that works with him. I've worked with St. John, I believe, ever since early 2019, so it's been several years that I've worked here for the town in many different aspects. And this is not the first financial management report we've done for the sewage works, but always happy to do another one for you all, so it's great to see you all. I also prepared a PowerPoint that is just going to really highlight what we talk about in this report, and you'll see some page references. So we're just going to kind of kick it off and get right into it. So Jason, if you can hit the next one. So really, why are we doing this? Why are we budgeting? As you all might be aware, utilities in the state of Indiana are not required per Indiana code to adopt a formal budget. It's not like the civil town funds that receive property tax where they are required to adopt a budget, submit it to the DLGF for approval. However, since the utilities are enterprise funds, you are not required to do that. However, Lake County is a little bit unique in which you have a water district and a sanitary district standalone funds that have property tax. They receive property tax, a small amount of property tax, but they get that twice a year. So this report does not include those funds because those funds do have to go through the formal budget process that starts here very soon, that will come across your laps at very soon board meetings as well as council's meetings. Those are smaller budgets, and typically the utilities have not used those funds for the large operating purchases or recurring expenses just because they don't generate a ton of revenue. So this report solely focuses on the rate-driven funds, so your operation and maintenance fund, your system development charges fund. We are excluding the property tax fund for the purpose of this report. So really, why budget? And this is all very self-explanatory, but that 5-year forward-looking is really for you to ensure now proactively that your rates are adequate well into the future. What we don't like seeing is unfortunately what happens a lot, especially in small towns. They don't do things like this. They aren't reviewing financials annually and proactively, and then they get years down the road. They neglect looking at rates, and then they have huge rate increases that, as you can imagine, upset a lot of citizens and taxpayers. So kind of having this 5-year forward looking, it's a decision-making tool, helps you obviously plan for the future, as well as in this report, you'll see we include 5 years of capital improvements. We like to have that capital improvement plan. You don't have a crystal ball, so it's a living capital improvement plan that you change as it changes. But it really helps you prioritize and determine, if we can't rate fund these things, how are we going to fund them? Next slide for me, Jason. So really our process in preparing these reports is step 1 is we review historical activity. So this report, starting on page 2, gives you historical look back from 2020. So we typically put 3 years in here. So page 2 is the historical cash balances broken out by fund. So on this page, you'll see first line, cash and cash equivalents, operation and maintenance fund, and you'll see that trend over that 3-year period. Now, specifically for the operation maintenance fund, you'll see it had a large jump in 2022, but respectively, you'll see 2 lines down, the bond and interest account. It's kind of an inverse trend. That was because in late 2021, we helped the clerk treasurer's office. There was a mix-up in the transfers to the bond and interest account. Easy fix. So we helped them correct that. So in 2022, the operation and maintenance fund is at where it should be, or at the end of 2022. Similarly, the bond and interest account is where it should be as well. Some other funds here, your improvement fund, your wastewater transmission line fund, system development fund, and wastewater treatment expansion fund. We list those all out, and then you've got a total cash and cash equivalents. And then right below that, just a reminder, the utility does use BTIS, Baker Tilly Investment Services, to invest idle cash, which you guys at the end of 2022 have just over $2 million in investments. And that really is to just generate additional dollars from monies that the utility currently isn't using. And then we also list your bond indebtedness, the 2012 bonds, the amounts you pay to Schererville for your share of their bonds, as well as the temporary water loan. So this page is a 3-year look back for cash balances. And then if you flip to page 3, this is same thing, a 3-year look back, but for revenues and disbursement. So you'll see the top of the page starts with operating receipts. So sewer collections, and you see that trend over the past 3 years. We also have the 2023 budget on the far left or far right. We'll get into that here in a minute. And this is kind of like a summary sheet of those historical financials as well as the 2023 budget. But then it goes, if you go down the page, operating disbursements, net operating receipts, non-operating disbursements. And then at the very bottom, you'll see the increase or the decrease in cash and cash equivalents, so AKA investments, for that year, as well as the ending cash and cash equivalents. So if you look 3 lines from the bottom, you'll see the past 3 years, the sewage works has had very healthy cash increases, and that's due to a couple of things. Sewage works adopted a rate increase in 2021, as well as the substantial growth that we've seen in the town for the past several years. Also, if I'm going too fast or if you have any questions, please stop me. Go back one, sorry. So that's really our first step. We take a look, the 3 years pass, and then we develop the 2023 budget. So you'll see the note on the screen. We came on site and worked with Joe, Beth Hernandez, and Bob Davis to go line by line with these financials and determine what's our target for the 2023 budget, what fits best, what makes sense, as well as we reviewed the 5-year capital improvement plan. So once we prepare the current budget, then we do our 5-year forecast, 5-year outlook, which will come at the very end here. And this, is self-explanatory, but it's really to identify issues, proposed solutions, as well as if you are looking at a, bond issue or a rate increase in the future, what's that stakeholder impact? How is that impacting your residents? Next one. So pages 4 and 5 really show you the detail of how we came up with this 2023 budget. And I know it's a little bit small on the page. That's just because there's so much information here. But really, it takes page 3 and it breaks it down by line. And you'll see in the second column from the left an account number. And that is the account numbers that Beth's office uses. So Beth was provided this report, and the idea is that she's going to plug in the 2023 budget into her system, and then the report she's able to generate every month or every however often you all want to see it, you can line up and say, okay, here's our budget, here's exactly how we're trending this month. So the far column to the right shows the 2023 budget notes, and those are the notes that we took from when we were on site on May 30th. So for example, sewer collections, the 2023 budget, we've got just over 3.7 million, and what we did there was we assumed a very conservative growth amount. What we want in our revenues is to be conservative, because we'd rather be conservative and you outperform the budget than the other way around. So if you just read through all those notes there, that's essentially what we did. There's a couple things between averages, amounts that Beth's office provided us for things like insurance, changes for, anticipated employees, things of that nature. But if you look on the PowerPoint, the next couple of slides really is just summarizing this 2023 budget. So total operating receipts for 2023, we've got just over 3.7 million. Next slide, Jason. Then into operating disbursements. And again, this is still on page 4, and I note this on the PowerPoint. This summarizes them, but you'll see here on page 4, it breaks it down between. Yeah, go ahead.
Good question. Back on page 4.
Yes.
Under the budget line items that were created.
The account numbers, or?
Well, for instance, I'm just looking at under administrative, contractual services under engineering. It looks like we've gone from 9,000, 12,000 down to 7,700.
Yep, and so contractual services is a little bit tricky just because your needs from engineering might change year to year. Or, for example, your needs from accounting, depending on whether you're, doing a bond issuance, could change year to year. So what we did for all of the contractual service, if you look in the notes, we took a 3-year average and then added an inflationary factor of 5%, and that's how we reached that 7,700 for engineering. Likewise, though, if you look down at legal, we're going from 100,000 in 2020 to 10,000 in 2022, and we've got 2023 budget is 50,800. So the idea would be, if you come in above 7,700 by a couple thousand, you may come in lower in another line item, if that makes sense. It's hard to
just to, Amber,
Yeah, go ahead.
not to interrupt you, but also we do have engineering considered in the district's budget as well. So this is the utility, but in the district's budget, there's engineering considered in there as well.
Okay, I didn't know, because, we've got
Yeah.
projects coming up here, and
Right.
Yeah.
We're going to have to
Yeah.
account for those, yeah.
Yeah.
just have to end up doing a budget amendment or something.
Yes, we'll come back and say we need to amend the budget because we're going to be exceeding the budget, so.
Yes, absolutely. And like I said, not only the capital improvement is a living document, but this is a living document as well. If there are material changes to spending or, capital improvements, you name it, this document can be updated and amended throughout the year as often as you want if you need additional versions.
Yeah, and the nice thing is, to your point, that it's not statutorily required that we have a budget. One of the things when I came in here in early 2022 is I couldn't wrap my head around the fact that we didn't have a budget for utilities, both sanitary and water. And I'm like, we need to get this budgeted. So that was kind of one of my goals when I first came in, is that we got to get this budgeted, so that way it's basically we know where we're going with this. And then when the new board kind of was seated, it kind of just made sense to kind of get this thing finalized finally. So I'm glad we're here.
So,
I'm sorry, just to
Yeah.
clarify, I'm glad you brought that up, John. So the list of projects on page 6,
yep.
those do not include engineering. I
Um,
mean, some of those are just plain engineering items, I think.
Well, they certainly could include engineering. So, but for example, in the water board meeting, the Acorn, and these amounts came from the May 30th meeting with Bob Davis. For example, the Acorn lift station abandonment, we have 275 from his estimates, but I heard earlier it's actually 350,000. So is that difference engineering? But maybe that 350,000 does include engineering, and we just need to update our report here. So, especially like if you're doing a large project where you're issuing bonds, those engineering expenses would be paid out of the bond proceeds. They wouldn't be paid out of your operating budget. So it kind of depends on the project, and yeah, you have
And
questions.
if I'm not mistaken, I think engineering and stuff like that, your consultant fees, attorney fees, if I'm not mistaken, that has to be paid out of the district first and then out of the utility. I don't know if there's a statutory requirement for that, but I remember seeing something to that effect.
I don't believe so. Well, I could check, but for like the water bonds that were issued in 2021, so like our fees, legal fees, engineering fees, all of those are considered cost of issuance for that one large project that was paid out of those bond issuances, and all of those fees were paid out of bond proceeds.
Right, but I'm saying like,
Oh, like operating.
correct. So,
I'm not sure,
yeah,
to be
I
honest
remember
with
seeing
you.
something about that statutorily where those requirements should be paid out of sanitary district first before you start tapping your utility cost. And I think there's a reason for that, because you're taxing the residents for those specific, tasks. Those amounts that are being billed to the community should be paid from the taxing district first. Once those are exhausted, then it goes to the utility. I remember reading that somewhere, and I don't know if that's true, but I'll
Yeah.
defer to you guys on that.
I'd have to look it up in the Indiana code, but I made a note here. And to anything that I can't obviously answer on the spot, I'll either look it up and shoot you an email
I'm just
tomorrow or
throwing this out
consult
there
with
for an
Eric.
FYI.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm not sure, because I know the sanitary district also pays for things like insurance.
Right.
A couple of other small operating costs every year. I mean, their budget is very small. Yeah.
I mean, it's
So
still 300,000 or whatever it is, but I mean, it's
Right.
it's a chunk.
yep.
Yeah.
And then I also have a question on page 6 here for
Yes.
the capital projects. Under like lift station maintenance, SCADA system, those are typically, that would be, like it says, a maintenance issue. Wouldn't that be not a capital program, more of a maintenance, because it's ongoing? Where typical, your capital is a one-time expenditure, or either for a project or, so,
Yes.
SCADA system and lift station maintenance, that's going to be ongoing year after year after year after year,
Right.
where I wouldn't see that being in a capital program.
Right. And I agree with you. And typically, yes, State Board of Accounts has some exceptions though. So for example, the SCADA system, when you made that initial purchase of like 600,000 or something that was allocated to the sewage works, that itself was a capital purchase. So now the maintenance for the SCADA system is
Should go in.
supporting that capital purchase. And yeah,
Wouldn't that normally be in operating expenses though, from this point
Well-
on? I understand the initial purchase, yes.
yeah,
But ongoing, that's never going to go away.
right.
And is that Wonderware, if I'm not mistaken, the 3,200?
Well, there's the Wonderware
Yeah.
software license, then there's also the SCADA server, there's also the cellular modems that have been prepaid, but there's definitely going to be ongoing costs. And
We want, and I think why we put it in here was because we wanted it as a placeholder, so that way, for continuity, it's not forgotten that these are ongoing
Right.
expenses for this.
Right. But typically, we're allocating so much for capital improvements, and based on what our future capital, these are always going to be there from now on.
Right.
They're not going to go away. So they should, I would think, be typically put in as your normal operating, day-to-day accounting. So your next budget year, you know, that's already factored in, you know, and you can easily track that in there instead of
Yep.
under a capital program. You know, I know we have a dollar amount in there or a Vector truck lease. You know, that's gonna be a one-time, purchase capital. It may only go for
5 years.
5 years. I can see that, but then at the end of those 5 years, it's done, but any maintenance on that is gonna be put into a
Right.
maintenance budget.
So back to the SCADA system, I mean, really, it could go either way. I mean, there's an argument for it either way. In this report, as is now, it's built in. If you want it in your actual 2023 budget as its own line item, maybe like contractual services, SCADA, we simply could move it over there, absolutely. But then like the lift station maintenance, it kind of depends, because if you are doing, you know, a large maintenance project that is one check of $75,000, the town's capital asset threshold, or based on your capitalization policy, is likely $5,000. So when State Board of Accounts looks at that and they see a $75,000 maintenance purchase to improve your lift station, they're going to say that's way above your capital asset threshold. They could very well include it or assume it's a capital asset.
But that would be for one station. You know, you would have a normal, you know, we have 12 stations?
We got about 14, I think.
14.
Yeah.
Right.
So I would imagine this is, the lift station maintenance, including the 75,000 for the 14 stations. So that's where I would see that as, once again, it's a cost that's never
Yep.
gonna go away, that gets put into an operating budget. I can see your point where the state says, you know, if it's going to one station, that's 75, you know, that's a
Oh, yeah.
red flag.
Yeah.
But I don't think this necessarily would be.
So if you're making like smaller payments throughout the year, maybe like 3,000 here, 2,000 here, absolutely, it would be maintenance. And we would want it in a maintenance budget. If it totals, you know, 75,000 over the course of the year, yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
If it's a purchase of a new pump, you know, or something like that for one station, then I could see that, you know, for $75,000, you know, based on the size of the station, I could see that as a one-time capital expense. But then afterwards, it goes into normal maintenance. And I think we need to make an adjustment if it is approved on, for tonight, or, for the Vector. That's gonna be a much higher number, so we need to make sure that we've got funds.
That's only 40% of the
Yep.
the total. So 40,
Okay.
30, 30.
Okay, excuse me.
Yeah.
Yep,
And-
so we
and
assumed
what I-
500,000.
And that's a very good question, but my recommendation is let's, and I don't want to kind of jump ahead, but let's hold off on approving the budget tonight, go through it. If you guys have any questions, when we have our special meeting to do the award for the Acorn project, then you guys can make your approval at that point. And if there needs to be any changes, then Amber can take care of those.
Absolutely.
my suggestion.
Absolutely. Yeah, if you want to read through this,
Yeah.
you know, later
There's
this week or
No
month.
reason to take action on it this evening unless you guys are inclined to do so, but that way at least you guys can take it home, digest it. If you guys have any questions, Amber can get those addressed. I can address whatever, Tom can address whatever. But then when we do the Acorn award, then, you know, maybe we have a special meeting at that point, or I think the intent was to have it at the regular meeting at next month, which is fine.
What is the parish 231 roundabout?
Ah,
I can explain that. Would you like me to
Yeah,
explain
go ahead.
NDOT's going to be putting a roundabout there, and we helped them out with the utility locates of what St. John owned, and we wanted to look at what possible conflicts were going to be. And then when we looked at it, we talked to them about where their storm sewer plan was. We knew where our sanitary is, we know where our water main is, and they don't have their storm sewer designed yet.
Yeah.
And so we can't really figure out where the conflicts are until the storm sewer conflicts come in place.
yeah,
And
they
so that's
they
what
were
we're waiting on.
confused that we went to them and had questions and.
Right. So I would say that just stay in front of this. The town went to the effort of doing topography of where all their utilities are on their GPS coordinate system, gave it to them so then I have everything as opposed to being a surprise. So they have it. And so, Jim, what we're doing right now is we're waiting for them to get back to us with the storm sewer plan and see if there are any conflicts. There are some water mains we are running right down the middle of the roundabout. It's a decision the board's gonna make, do they wanna leave it there or not? They're relatively young water mains too. They're not like 70-year-olds. And we got to see what kind of issues we got. So we don't know what that's gonna be. And that's sewer and water. So that's what we talked about.
Thank you.
Okay.
And we did want to include it in this report just to keep it on the list, although Bob Davis, when we spoke with him, he did not have an amount. All right, so went through operating disbursements. Again, please provide us any comments, and we are more than happy to provide a revised report. So next slide. So the next two slides are really just your non-operating revenues, interest income, system development charges, things of that nature. Interest income, again, we got this number directly from George, who manages the investments for the town. He estimated around $60,000 for interest income in 2023. And then things like your tap fees and system development charges, we were a little bit conservative there. So if you look back at page 5, you'll see our budget is a little bit lower than 2020 through 2022. Again, just because we want to be conservative and we want you to outperform that budget. Next slide, Jason. And then on the flip side, these are all of the non-operating disbursements. So this is where all of the capital improvements from page 6 are factored into at the bottom line. The water loan repayment, the pilot payment, as well as all of the debt service payments. So next slide. So this is really kind of the summary. If you spend your entire budget, revenues come in as conservative as we are showing in this report. We show a shortfall in cash of almost $231,000. However, if you compare that to the town's current cash balances, again, reminder, this includes over $500,000 of capital this year. Even with this shortfall in cash, the utility would still be above minimum and even recommended cash reserves.
Question with respect to the cash reserves, does that include any debt coverage?
So
Debt coverage reserve, I should say, that's required.
it does not. Are you talking about like the 125%?
Yeah.
So back when, well, it would have been back when you issued bonds, you would have had to show 125% coverage for like the next 3 years. So that was back in 2012. However, when we did the rate study in 2021, we would have made sure you were still at debt coverage. Okay. And since your cash balances have not fallen below and your revenues have actually increased since 2021, we are safe to assume that you still have that debt coverage. Anytime we do a rate study, we always make sure you have debt coverage. In addition to, when I say like minimum cash reserves, we want to make sure you're fulfilling your promises to your bondholders. That's your bond and interest account, your debt service reserve account, as well as your operation and maintenance fund. Those all have restrictions based on your bond ordinance that basically says you're going to keep so much money in there at all times, which you guys have. So,
what is the debt service reserve amount for our current bonds?
So the debt service reserve amount is actually a little bit low because the only bonds that the Sewage Works owns are the 2012 bonds. So it's at $210,000, which is right at or above where you're supposed to be. Since Schererville owns the 2016 bonds, the town does not have, or the utility does not have a debt service reserve requirement for that. That would be on them.
We're not required to have any money set aside for that.
No, you just probably have an agreement with them that says you're going to transfer. And I believe part of your transfers, which just ended, so it would have been in the past, part of your transfers to Schererville included some debt service reserve funding, but the responsibility to have that funded is on them. Yeah.
Gotcha. Thank you.
One other question.
Yes.
Do you know off the top of your head what the minimum reserve is for operating or in the utility fund? Is it a 3-month reserve? Is it
2 months.
2 months?
Yep. So if you just look at like page 2, the year-end balance for the operation and maintenance fund, you're just over 1 million. 17% is about 2 months, and that's going to be around 400,000. So you are 600,000 above. And then, and then add in like your system development fund. That is not restricted based on your bond ordinance. So it is not, and that was based on Phil Facenda, the bond counsel. 2 years ago when the water bonds were issued, he, as bond counsel, said that the system development fund was not a restricted fund. Now, if you want to use all of that money, I would suggest confirming with him and confirming with your local attorney. However, when we did the water bonds, they were declared unrestricted and can be used towards capital improvements. Next page, Jason. So this is kind of the final, our 5-year forward looking, and we always provide this in a graph just because it's easier to look at and makes a little bit more sense. So if you look at years 2023 through 2025, you'll see in the chart that receipts come in slightly lower than total disbursements. And depending on the year, it's anywhere between 200 to 300,000. That is solely driven by the loan repayment to the water utility. That's a 500,000 repayment per year. And then you'll see in 2026 and 2027, that trend flips. And now you've got a 300,000, 400,000 gain in cash in those years. And that's simply because the temporary loan from the water utility is paid off. Now, when we were on site, there were questions of, can we pay this off early? The answer is absolutely yes. There were also questions of, should we cash in CDs that we currently hold in investments and use that money to pay it off? And our suggestion would be no, because the water loan is at 0%, whereas the money you're making on those CDs are obviously higher than 0%. But it could be, the sewer utility wants to make, instead of 3 payments of 500,000, cutting off a year and doubling up, paying 750 for the next 2 years. That's absolutely possible. You just see a more of a dip in cash in those years. But then if you did that, your trend would reverse earlier in 2025. That's obviously not something you need to decide tonight, but just thinking into the future, absolutely. But again, it's at 0%. So, you're not paying any interest to the water utility.
Is there a recommended minimum that we should have in our account?
In like a cash balance?
Yeah, right.
What's the percentage wise? What's our percentage reserve require, or suggestion, if you will?
Typically, so a minimum is, like we said, if we're just talking the operation maintenance fund, a minimum is 17%. Our kind of best practice would be about 50%. So that would be 6 months worth. There's really no minimum for like your system development fund, because not every community in Indiana has that fund, same as your wastewater treatment expansion plant. That has certain restrictions to what it can be used for. I believe it's for capacity charges or you have to restrict it for capacity charges to Cherville. So there's really no minimum. So really, when we're talking about what do you have to have in your funds, it's your operation maintenance, your bond and interest, and your debt service reserve. And really, the operation maintenance is what has that minimum, like 2 months, 17% reserve.
I'm pretty sure I read a previous report by Baker and Tilly prior to my involvement, and there was a line on a similar graph to this. It was like recommended minimum. And so you could see this chart and you'd see that recommended minimum and you'd say, okay, well, this is how much cushion we have. And if we choose to pay down that debt service earlier, then we would be comfortable, right? So that's what I'm looking for.
Yeah.
Like, how low can we go? Because we wouldn't want to go below that.
Absolutely. I know exactly what graph you're talking about.
Yeah.
So in our revised report, we can absolutely add an extra page and include that graph.
Thank you.
Well, anyways, back to this chart. What this is essentially telling you is that, if revenues come in lower, you spend your full budget, you might see a decrease in cash in the next few years. But after the temporary loan is paid off, you would begin to see increases in cash, which would demonstrate that your rates are adequate, you have additional funds to invest in capital improvements, things of that nature. Now, if the parish roundabout amount comes back and it substantially changes this report, that conclusion could very well change. So again, this is living. We want to know these things and provide you updated reports as much as we can. The rest of this report is really just supplemental information, your debt payment schedules, your rate schedule, how your rates compare to the state average, things of that nature. So all informational things just for you to have in this report. Eric and my information is on the screen. Again, you're more than welcome to call us, email us anytime. Please send us comments that you have on the 2023 budget. And any final questions for me?
May I ask a question? Amber, on here on page 2, it talks about debt running out in 2025, the sewage works refinance bond, and also the one on September 30th, 2026. And then down below it, the loan is at 2025, the temporary water loan. When you add all those up, it comes out to be about $2.8 million in debt that's going to be expiring sometime around 2026, it looks like. On your graph, it didn't show when you had your debt thing, that one of the last slides you put up there. Jason, if you could put that up, I know. The one at the bar chart. That one. So it looks like the debt's going down, but not to the equivalent of these numbers. It's like it'd be like $2.9 million going down.
So that's the debt outstanding. So the par amount of the bonds, the principal amount of the bonds. So if you flip to the back on page 12, this is the combined debt service schedule, which says, okay, here's the different debt promises. These are the annual payments.
Okay.
Page 2 is just saying, as of 12/31/2022, you still owe $1.5 million on the water temporary loan. Whereas this is showing, if that makes sense.
It does.
Okay. Any other
I don't
questions?
get it.
That's your annual, is that your annual debt service amounts?
On page 12?
Yeah, well, on your,
Yes,
You're correct.
that's what
That's
the
your
money
debt
that goes
service.
out the door, correct?
so those are your debt service numbers.
But it drops off in 2026.
Because the bonds, or excuse me, the 1.5 million is paid back to the water.
Yes.
And those are 500,000 a year. So you're losing $500,000 a year.
Also, the 2012 bonds, which are about 200,000,
Right.
mature in 2025.
Right, so it's 1.1 million in year, if you look on page 12 in 2025, 1,000,009 is what she has up there in 2025.
Yeah, the
If you
chart
look
is
at the next
rounded.
year, it's 374K.
Oh, so it's reflected.
Yeah, it's reflected in there.
Okay. I'm sorry, I misinterpreted the first
No,
page.
it's okay.
I thought
No
that
worries.
was all coming off, and it's not. It's, I get it.
I know these numbers are sometimes not
Okay.
the most, they make my eyes cross too. All right, well, if there's no other questions from me, I will follow up with Joe and Beth and Rob Davis, if anyone has heard from you all, within the next few weeks, and we can issue you a new report as soon as you really want it. If you want it by next month's meeting, we're happy to update that for you.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Amber, for coming
Thank you.
on.
Have a good
Thanks,
night.
Amber.
Thank you. And before we leave this topic, I have a question for Jason, actually, because John brought up a good point. On page 4, under lift stations, we have contract services, other, as 66,000. But then you're saying the lift station maintenance infrastructure is like the Wonderware and all of that. What is the ongoing Microsoft expenses and everything? What is the contract services for the lift stations?
I'm sorry I was not involved in the creation of this document. I don't have it in front of me. I can crunch those numbers and I can get them to you later.
Yeah, I'm just curious, because we've got an amount of 66,000. Is that software and hardware annual expenses, or?
I could guesstimate that would be a roundabout number for the Wonderware license and the Microsoft license.
So that's just technology.
That's what I'm thinking, but again, I was not a part of any of the discussions, so I cannot say what that number is.
So that's a completely separate thing from any hard physical maintenance on these lift stations.
You know, and
I think, Patty, to your point, I believe those are for the actual services for the lift station. I don't believe that's part of the software
Okay,
in that.
so where is the software falling?
The Wonderware, I believe, was on the capital plan is expressed in that $3,200 figure. Because I recall that when we were discussing that for the SCADA system, that was for the $3,200, that was the sanitary's portion of that amount.
And again, as we found out recently, Microsoft, sort of enslaved by them. If they decide to raise their rates, they raise their rates.
Right.
So it's difficult to budget.
Well, we do have a 3-year contract with them, so we have that fixed amount, but as we add computers, we have to do the annual true-up. But that true-up is reflected to the appropriate departments that caused the increase.
Yeah, but the 62,943 under year 2022, Bob Davis recommended we kind of keep that about the same because those expenses are running probably true to form for this year.
Okay.
Yeah.
And when does our Microsoft license end? What's our 3-year end?
It ends in like November, December.
This year?
No, next year.
Next year, okay.
Yeah,
'Cause didn't we just
and I
true up-
can't
we
really
just trued
speak
up
for
with that?
Public Works, but
well,
typically.
you do a true-up every year of the contract.
Okay, that's right.
You know, I really can't speak for St. John Public Works, but typically in lift station maintenance that you see contractual services would be for an outside company, say, maybe a
Right.
gas voter or somebody come in that has to come in and actually physically pull a pump or.
Electrical upgrades or
Look,
whatever.
That or just some impeller repair, things like that, that's something that's not done
In-house,
in-house.
yeah.
It has to be contracted out to have that service work done. It's probably separate from what the SCADA
Yeah.
stuff is.
Do you
it's
think
more
that,
of-
that number's realistic, though? 75,000 annual maintenance and repairs for all the lift stations?
You know, that I don't know
If the
what,
pumps go bad and
Yeah.
I don't know what they've been spending annually. You know, that's something, and that's the whole reason for
did they take
putting
an
this
average?
budget together.
Right.
Well,
so
they
we
used
kinda-
it from last year and kind of just
Okay.
said, let's kind of keep it the same. So I believe she put a little bit of a cost increase in there from 2022.
And the lift station by Shilton Hills got a new generator. That was 98,000.
Yeah. Is that what the old one's sitting out over there?
That was the old one that was at lift station 1.
Yeah, what are they doing with that?
They're gonna let that sit there.
Does it still work?
Yeah,
Needs to be
I
worked
think
on?
they're gonna try and sell it.
Good.
Okay.
Usually doesn't work out too well.
Any other questions or discussion on the budget? Okay, and thank you again, Amber, for the presentation.
Yes, thank you.
All right, moving on to new/old business. On your agenda, we have several landscape credits for people doing landscaping. And the clerk's office has compiled a list. They have reviewed it, audited it, and we've got a total of sewer and landscape credits requests of $1,054.56. Barring any questions or discussion on the matter, I will entertain a motion for approval.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Okay, item number B. The new Vector truck, 2100 sewer cleaner. For some reason, I feel like I'm in a time warp. We just had a beautiful truck out here not too recently that was a demo. Wayne or Joe, do you want to discuss this?
Yeah, so we had this discussion with the Waterworks Board just before this meeting. We need to kind of move forward on getting this thing underway. So we're not asking for formal request to purchase on this as much as let's get this thing authorized so we can move forward on it. The current truck that we do have is at the end of its life cycle, basically. So we need to get this thing teed up. We're not looking at getting this thing until sometime maybe next year of 2024. So we want to get the thing moving forward so we can get a solid price on it, bring it back to the boards, and as this was apportioned out, 40, 30, 30. So that's going to still hold true when we get the final numbers. So once we get the final numbers, we'll bring that back to the boards and ask them to approve a request to purchase on that so we can encumber those funds.
What will the split be on this?
40, 40, or 40, 30, 30. So 40% for sanitary, 30% water, 30% stormwater.
Okay. All righty, and then when we had the demo here and the gentleman was out here, he said, you know, you could take the demo that day or wait for a build out, and at that point, it was 8 months out.
Well, we're at least a year, I think, is what we were looking
They've
at.
moved up to a year?
Yeah.
Okay.
And to Wayne's point earlier, he said that's if we can get a chassis.
Right.
Yeah. That's the biggest challenge, I
It
think.
could start out at 400,000 right now, and then they change, the chassis go up. So you could have like a change order on it while they're.
That's
while
why
you're
we want to get a firm price, at least so we know
Right.
where we're going with it. But this is kind of just to get the thing moving.
And then once you get a firm price, is that interest rate locked in as well for a lease?
As far as the lease purchase, no. not
Lease-
yet. That'll be
Interest
a,
rates keep going up.
that'll be a separate agreement, but this is through Sourcewell, so that we don't have to go through the bidding process and all that too, so.
Okay. And
So-
our old truck is basically in need of CPR, basically.
It works, but it is starting to have mechanical issues that are gonna need attention.
The end
so
of its lifespan.
It is, it truly is. I mean, it's 20 years old. I mean, it's pretty old.
Okay. So what we're looking for is a motion to approve and to authorize the town manager to proceed with the purchase process. That means doing some research,
Bringing the information and the data back to the boards.
moving forward on it.
Yep.
Okay.
We just don't want to be sitting on this. We want to move forward on it.
So my understanding the process will be then is you'll go out and get a final quote from
Yep.
Sourcewell.
Yep. And that way we can move forward with it, get a purchase order number for them to get us a solid number.
And will that come back to us again?
Oh, yeah, it's going to come back to
Okay.
you. You'll have a request to purchase just like you would on anything else. But we don't have to go out for bid because it's through
Right, 'cause it's
Sourcewell.
Sourcewell.
Yeah.
Okay, but we will see that figure before this.
You're going to have to approve it, yes.
Yeah,
And then,
okay.
yeah. Yeah, and then as far as the lease purchase agreement, yeah, all three respective boards would have to approve that as well.
Okay, and they're about, you said, a year out on the
Yep.
build.
That's what I was told, yeah. We're about a year out. 2024,
And there's no demo available.
right.
Are you sure?
I asked already.
That was a nice unit that was here.
Yep.
Yeah, and it
Who
was
ended
al-
up with that unit? Because I remember,
I don't know, they kept it here overnight so we could have it for the meeting, and they took it back, it didn't last too long, and somebody else got it.
okay. They got a good deal. Okay. Any other discussion or question?
I thought Bob Davis said last year that it was in pretty good shape and we wouldn't need to do anything for quite a few years.
I remember that conversation too.
Yeah,
I don't know why it died a sudden death, but,
Just,
it might have had something to do with winter. It got left out, and it froze, and they had to fix it, so,
it might have, right.
yeah, there were some problems. They used it not too long ago, it's
Yeah.
running, but not like probably what it should.
okay.
So who left it out? Was it supposed to have been left out?
In a hurry, that it was outside. It might have been just while they were working, but it froze, they had to get it fixed.
What kind of warranty does this thing have?
Tail light.
I mean, going forward, we're going to make sure Public Works maintains the equipment, correct?
Well, I'm sure it does come with some type of warranty, but that's a good question. I
Yeah.
don't have. I don't know that answer.
I mean, I'm sure they will.
I'm sure the chassis is warranted for X amount, and then, you know, the mechanical parts and stuff, the pump, stuff like that.
Well, this is a lot of electronics on this.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
So it's like buying a new car, you know. Used to be, you were worried about your engine being under warranty. Now you need a warranty just for the electronics.
Just the electronics, yeah. That's very true.
Yeah.
And it's set up like the other one. One man could operate it. He'll have the little control in front of him and basically do it almost all himself.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they brought one out here because the contractor brought their vac truck out to help us out on an issue that we had Friday. And boy, that thing, I tell you what, just seeing one of those things in action is really cool.
Yeah.
Really, I mean, it just makes the job so much easier,
Yep.
especially when you're trying to work in an area like this.
Right.
It's
They
incredible.
cut the clay bank just like butter.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Where the guy was in there with a shovel and he wasn't getting anywhere.
He was dying like a rat. He was.
All righty, then we will entertain a motion to approve and authorize the town manager to start the purchase process for the Vector 2100 series sewer cleaner truck.
So moved.
Do I have a
Second.
second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Okay, reports and correspondence. Robinson Engineering, project updates.
Thank you, Madam President.
Woke you up.
What I'd like to go with first, I'd like to go with this graph here showing the flows the town is contributing to Sherrville. And I think this ties in hand with the budget, to be honest with you, where they had that sewer capacity charge in there and so forth on it. We completed the Acorn Lift Station abandonment permit job. And we also had another permit that we were asked to review for Streamside. And Mr. Davis asked me if we had capacity. And I says, well, I gotta check it out, I don't know. So we got the agreement. The agreement says that St. John's entitled to 2.63 million gallons of their 8.75 million gallon treatment plant. Now, I don't know if it's what these numbers here talk about sewer capacity. I'm imagining it probably is. We also said, well, that's fine for where we're at, or where we're at now. You can see your flows are going up. In 2020, you're 1.9, 2021, 1.97, 2022. But 2023 is not a real reflection of your actual flows. And the reason is that it's a 365-day annual comparison average. And we just looked at the first 150 days. And the first 150 days is your heaviest rain months. You got April, May, June in there. You get a lot of I&I coming in. When you get into this time period, you're almost getting zero I&I coming in on it. So my guess is 2.16 will be somewhere around a 2.05 maybe, or a 2.006. But either way, we're getting close to this 2.63 million gallons a day. We also looked at all the promised service connections the town made with developers that are not built now. And we had an anticipated population equivalency for every single unit that was not built. We came up with a number, and the number's getting close to 2.63. We talked to the president about it. We talked to Mr. Wizawadi about it. I said, we really got to start having a conversation with Sherrville. Your options are limited, and your options are you could just stay with 2.63 and say, we're done, we're closing development, everything's fine. But there's this beautiful land south of 231, which you want to have fabulous developments and great community coming into town. Your options are to get some more treatment plant capacity from Sherrville if they have it. Your other option is to look at the possibility of going to a different provider for wastewater treatment, such as Crown Point on it too. So, but right now, the easiest option, obviously, is have Sherrville say, yeah, that makes sense. So there's not an alarm flag here. I mean, obviously, you can think of how long it's going to take to build out. And when I build out the subdivisions that are currently built with open, empty lots in it, or platted subdivision, they haven't even started yet. I mean, it could be 5 years, it could be 7, it could be 10. But we're taking a look at it for you right now, and we don't want to be in the crisis mode later on it. So that's what this is for on it. So
Could somebody talk to me about the Sherrville expansion fund that we're always paying into? Isn't that for expansion of the Sherrville plant for St. John's capacity?
From my understanding, that it's for the expansion of the plant. Since we are 30% owner, it's like taking a mortgage on your property. They did some work on it. We were responsible for a portion of the payment of that work.
Oh, so we're just paying off what they did years ago.
Correct. Yeah, it's like a second mortgage, basically.
I was hoping that was like a fund that's being built up
No.
for when we hit that capacity.
Like a
limit.
reserve, huh?
What's that?
Like a reserve.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
But because we are 30% owners of it, any debt that they incur for expansion or maintenance or something is also passed on to us at a 30% rate.
Okay.
Tom, what is the capacity of Sherville, do you know?
8.75.
Their total plant?
Yeah. So when you think about that, folks, you think it's going to be 87,500 people, right?
So
That's what it'll come out to,
We're not even
be.
we're not even at 60,000, so.
Right.
No, but Sherville's told us they're at 30,000. We know you're at around 21,000. And there's this 30,000 laying on the table.
Right.
Maybe they want it. Maybe they're like, hey, have it, you know?
But it's the conversation you need to
It's a
start.
conversation, exactly. And that we just don't want to be surprised. We don't want to over obligate too and then be forced into doing something. I mean, if they can't give it to you and it's not affordable, you got to make a decision. What do you want to do? Now we're in this mode where it's not going to be a crisis. We're going to have a conversation. We're going to see what our options are, see what the costs are. And if there is additional cost for it, which there probably will be if you're buying additional capacity, let's make sure every developer that uses this is paying additionally for it and the residents aren't. So this can be set up as a user impact fee for additional sewage treatment cost. It'd be done in that type of manner too. So,
We have to keep in mind the timeline on treatment plant expansion. Like, we say go today, 5 years from now, we got capacity.
Right.
So
Right.
It is a long timeline.
We're trying to look forward with future planning like we are with the budget. And the problem has been, it's been sort of an issue, but now we don't want it to become a crisis. The Plan Commission is approving developments. No one is discussing with us or the water district,
yeah.
can you provide water and sewer for all these people? So now all of a sudden, we've got a couple thousand houses possibly on the horizon that we have to provide basic utilities for. Can we do it? And this discussion needs to take place because, development has slowed down a little bit, but we want to make sure we're being proactive with it. We don't want to be caught, like Tom said, in a crisis. Then all of a sudden, we're at capacity, we can't send them any more wastewater. What do we do? So it's unfortunate, but we can't afford not to research this.
I have the original agreement that you signed with them. If anybody would like a PDF of it, I'll be happy to send it to the entire board.
70-some pages, yeah.
It's not fun reading, but.
What
you
year
can-
was
you can
that?
see, this was in 2016.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the bonds would expire 20 years, or did a 30-year bond? I don't know, but it'd be interesting to see what that's for.
Okay.
So I'd say that it's something important that you know, and something important that's being watched out for. It's something important that the president is talking to Sherrville, and we'll be getting back to the board with what the options are. And all the options will have a cost associated with it, and there's no reason why that cost cannot be imposed on all future developments coming in on it too.
Right.
And Tom, these numbers, do they include, is this without any I, or is it right now including?
No, sir, it's right now. So it's a representation of what your flow is. If you remember those graphs I showed you, those yearly graphs showing your ionized peaking with the rains, that's exactly what it's coming from. This is actual meter data coming from Sherrville that they're billing St. John on wastewater treatment use. So every single one. And that's why the 2023 is a little bit skewed, because we got the April, May, and June rainy season. Well, not June, it's not rainy now, but,
The only thing I was wondering is our numbers compared to if there was no I at all, based on what our water pumpage is
yeah.
per day.
It's amazing. You
how
pump
close-
more water.
Like right now, how close those numbers are from what we're pumping.
That's what that graph showed. If you remember that graph, we pump more water than we treat sanitary sewage. I think it's because the irrigation community that we're in with developments. I think that's what the reason is. You see in June, this thing spikes and it stays super high. The water use until about September. Then it drops down right about where the sanitary sewage flow is. If you look at the numbers here too, John, you can see that at 2 million gallons, it's a population equivalency of about 20,000 people. You're right at 20,000 people. And that's 100 gallons per person per day. I mean, it seems like it's tight, but we know that there's 1970 subdivisions out there that we know that are not tight. But we know everything new with the PVC pipe and the rubber gasket joints, and they're built well and they're tested. I mean, that's really tight now, so.
That area that Jason has his cursor on right now, is that the Cherville dump?
That's probably where they put their spoils,
Yeah?
my guess, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yeah, and that Kennedy Avenue is gonna be going straight through. Right
Yep.
now, it's a dead end.
Yep.
They plan on opening that up and connecting it to the Kennedy that comes south out of Highland.
Oh, that'd be beautiful.
It
So,
will,
instead of
Yeah.
going around the police station and doing all that.
cracks and all that. They're gonna put a flyover bridge.
And
So-
Tom, the only reason I was asking those numbers is because if, would it make more sense to build a excess flow plant?
Well-
But if these numbers are not really counting in much I&I,
I don't-
then it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to do that.
I'd say that there are certain parts of town we know that we have I&I issues on. I'd say that representative, you do have 21,000 people, you're right at 100 gallons per capita per day, averaged over 365. In this agreement, they base your use over your 365-day averages. A lot of towns don't. They say the top 30 days or the top 60 days on it. So you're shaving out all your heavy I&I days with your drought days now on this agreement, so.
Yeah.
Which is good.
Yeah, I do think it's good. I think it's also fair, too.
Yep, okay.
And is there any, to your knowledge, any federal grant money or anything to help offset, like, if we need to buy into more expansion into Cherville to help offset, like Crown Point just got, several million for their treatment plant. Are you?
We could take a look at it for you, but to be honest with you, anything development-driven, there normally isn't grant money for it.
Okay,
Normally, if it's a pre-existing condition that has maximum contamination levels exceeding whatever the item standards are, you may be able to get some grant funding for it. But if it's developer-driven, they just say, it's not my problem, it's a developer's problem, so. But I'm about to tell you what, Madam President, we will take a look into it for you.
okay.
Okay.
And we do have an option to help offset some of the funding for this, any new development come in.
Right.
To help
I think
offset
the
any of
issue
these
would be is that you have to front-load it and then get the money back as developers develop.
Right, and we're looking at revising the subdivision control ordinance to make those accommodations to cover expenses like adding additional capacity for water and wastewater, so
Okay.
not just, road impact fees or park impact fees, but, possibly some other alternatives.
So who's going to start the conversation with Cherville?
Patty
think we-
is.
It's been started.
Yeah, we've already started.
Yeah, it's been started.
Yeah.
We just wanted, it needed to be introduced so you
Right.
hear it.
They're
So when it's presented,
Yeah.
you're like, where did this come from?
Yeah,
You know?
they're willing to accommodate whatever we need, and it's just starting that conversation, and it's gonna come down to cost and, negotiating on that end, so.
And it's not a tomorrow thing, it's
Right.
not a next week thing.
It's not an emergency, we're just trying to be proactive about it.
Yeah, the same thing with their budget, we've got to put things into the budget so we can plan accordingly, because before we were a ship without a rudder and just floating along and whatever happened, happened. We don't want that to be anymore,
Great,
so.
thank you.
I think it's mostly being transparent. I mean, we share everything that we've got. We work a lot with your staff. Then we talk to Patty about this is what we're finding, and then let's just make sure the board knows. That's what the marching orders I get, make sure the board knows, so.
Great.
And we've had some very positive, proactive future planning meetings, which is good, because to my knowledge, a lot of these meetings have really never taken place with, somebody from Public Works, and, we had the gentleman from Building and Planning involved, what's our future developments and things like this. So a lot of these conversations that are taking place have never taken place at a table setting. So it's a good and positive thing. It's a good step forward.
Right.
Yeah. We're getting into the 21st century. Alrighty.
May move on to one more job too, I'm gonna want to talk about.
Yes.
Okay, so the Acorn Lift Station, we got the permit from IDEM last week.
And I have a question about that before
Okay.
we start. In the budget, it listed about was 275.
Right.
I thought we were 225.
We're at $350,000 now. So
Our,
your portion of it, yes, it is, and the water main portion is about $1 million. But,
what
Madam
happened to
President,
225?
we didn't have the plans and specs done 100%. It was an estimate, is what we had in it, and also the bid numbers are going to come in, and we don't know. We're on a conservative side on it, so.
Holy cow, okay.
But here's what I would say with that. We could do estimates as much, but when we get the bids, we'll know where the numbers come in at. And you could also see what the long-term savings is going to be on this. So, nothing is going to mandate you to go forward with this. When everything is said and done, if you're like, nope, I don't want to, I don't want to do it, you could operate status quo. But then you're still going to have maintenance, electrical, a lot of different associations with the lift station that people don't want when you have gravity flow
Yeah.
on it, too.
No, we started the process. So what is the next step on the bid process?
The next step is that we're informed by the Corporation Council of the town that we need to get the Sanitary Sewer Board to approve it, the Water Board to approve it, and the Town Council to approve it. So that puts us up with an issue as far as picking a date to open up bids on it. And what I want to propose is that we open up bids either on the 17th or the 18th. The 18th evening, you have your water or sewer board meeting, and the water board meeting is there also. If we could get the buy-in at that meeting, we'll have a bid tabulation, a recommendation letter for you. We get the buy-in at that meeting, we then go to the town council meeting, it's on the 26th, which is the next Wednesday. So, and if that's the case, all the stars align, all three boards can approve it. If one misses the other, we're going to August for approval. And it's just the nature of the beast of having three independent boards that meet once a month that kind of pushes up against this, so.
Will these bids be good into August?
But they will be absolutely good into August. What I'm worried about more is the construction schedule.
Right.
We got an opportunity to finish this season as opposed to coming back and doing more work in the spring.
No, we want it done this year,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah, we committed that to the residents there,
Right.
so.
But a lot was predicated in the permit. We just got the permit, so we moved as fast as we can on it.
So bid opening would be when?
Well, right now, John, I'm looking at the 17th on a Monday, okay? But it may go to the 18th depending on when they could get the advertisement in. And we're working with the clerk on this right now too. This is not the normal protocol that the town does. The town typically takes bids at the town council meetings and then waits a month to do the award. We could do that, but I don't think we'll be able to keep our promise to the residents on it. So.
Yeah, it's a different process than what we've done in the past. And honestly, if we're expediting the thing, I think it's still being transparent, of course, but I think it just makes sense to get things expedited, open the bids, in a public setting, and just move the thing along a little quicker, that's all.
And it will be in a public setting, too.
Yeah.
It'll be in this room, public will be invited, televised, recorded.
So
Clerk will
whether
be
it's
there.
the 17th or the 18th, would you do that during the day so you could then get your bid tabs ready for the
Yes,
meeting
sir.
at night?
Yeah, we will be striving for like a 10 a.m. bid opening on it. Now, that's just not the normal protocol that you've done in the past. In the past, they're dropped off at the clerk's office, and at nighttime they come to the bid opening, and they open it up, and they read it, and they give it to the town.
Well, and I could tell you what we did with the CCMG project too. When they opened the bids, they basically said, okay, town manager, you're authorized to go ahead and award the bid based on that. So I waited for the recommendation from the engineer, signed off on the bid. So, but I think that's, to me, that's kind of a flawed process. I would prefer to have the public body approve the bid instead of just having one individual responsible for doing it. I think it's more transparent.
And a lot of times, I mean, I'm not, I mean, you understand this. There's errors on the bids. And when there's errors on the bids, we have to review them and see if the error is major or minor. And then let the town council know, let the town council decide, is this a major error that requires a disqualification? Or is this a minor error, like it could be a mathematical error? Well, mathematical error doesn't really count because whatever the math is, the math is. But if it's something like if the person forgot to sign a line, and he's the low bidder by $40,000. Is it really in the public's best interest to toss his bid out because he forgot to sign a line? And there's like 5 signature lines in these bids, you know, for that reason. You could decide if that's minor. And if it is minor, you could waive minor technicalities, state what the technicality is and waive it for this one time. It won't be like a blanket waive forever. But we've all been through bids, and very rarely do you get one to come in completely clean from front to end.
Yeah, they forget the bid bond or whatever.
Yeah.
They forget
Yeah.
everything.
And then that way, as the board, you could decide if it's major or minor,
Right.
too. You know, and you could decide if the savings is worth it or not,
So this will be open and a recommendation will be made to us, hopefully at our meeting.
On the 18th.
Right.
On it. But the thing is that we got to work with the clerk's office about getting an advertisement date on it. And there's a little bit, don't know for sure when we're going to have that exact advertisement date.
So this needed to get done yesterday.
Well, we just got the
Yes.
permit, so,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, we just got the permit.
Yeah.
From item on that.
Okay.
We
That's
had the
all I
water
have.
one, we were waiting on the sanitary one.
All righty. Any other discussion on this one?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Anything else?
No, ma'am.
Okay. All righty. Any questions relative to this?
Yes. We need a scope of work from you.
I know. Things have been pretty hectic with the sewer and water side of it, and then I'll get that to you within a week or so, okay? You know, we'll have the complete scope on it. We know what the costs are. We're done with it now. We got the permit in hand, and I'll have it to you in a week or so, okay? And I apologize for not getting to this sooner.
Because technically, we have no agreement with you, so technically, you're on your own, you know, without that scope of agreement. You're working in good faith, basically.
Yeah, there is a trust involved here. I mean, if I could have said, we're gonna stop until the next meeting and get the scope approved, it would have been, we would never made it, ever. So,
Okay.
yeah, but I apologize, and I'll make sure you get it in a week or so.
Okay. All righty. Moving forward, Mr. Wayne, Town Council Liaison.
Everything's been covered, so,
Everything,
yeah.
nothing to add, huh?
No?
Okay. All righty. Mr. Town Manager.
I have no report this evening.
Okay.
I think we've covered most of it.
All righty. All right, moving forward to the payment of bills. If everyone's had a chance to review the vouchers, it's presented by the clerk's office. We've got the sanitary district payable vouchers in the amount of $35,950.20. Barring any questions or discussion, I'll accept a motion for approval.
Under the question,
Yes, sir.
under the Sandler Dalton, the 2 invoices for April and May, I
Yes.
was still a little confused on what those were. I seen there was some stuff from the clerk's office.
In
but-
fact, Patty had the same question. So with respect to those are for continuing disclosures on the bonds. They did those last year. They did them again this year. It just, Senator Dalton's like, if you're going to do them, just go ahead and do them. That would, Baker Tilly basically said, if you're going to do the continuing disclosures, just go ahead and continue to do them.
And
So it's kind of
because
a mutually agreed thing.
we did, the approval of Baker Tilly was a little bit later in the year, and there's a drop-dead deadline. These filings had to be done. Eric said, just go ahead and have Senator Dalton do them this year. They will do them next year.
And that's on the bond issues that we have outstanding. So
just the
there's
bonds.
continuing disclosures that have to be done on those each year.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I had the same question. I was
Yeah.
like, wait a minute, why is this here? So. Okay, any other questions? All right, entertain a motion for approval of $35,950.20 for the sanitary district vouchers.
So moved.
Second? Anyone second? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Wastewater utility, we have vouchers presented to us in the amount of $874,982.93. Again, barring any discussion or questions, accept a motion for approval.
So moved.
Any second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. No public comments?
Can I make a request?
Yes, sir.
Could we take action on the budget next month?
Yes. Yes, definitely.
It'd be great to have it added to the
Yes.
agenda and accepted.
Yes,
Or
and-
voted on.
And
Sorry.
Amber or Eric will get us the necessary amendments that we've discussed tonight, like yours with the line item, which is a good thing, and some other questions with some other line items. So they will get that to us.
Great. Thank
So
you.
we will definitely put that on the agenda. Okay, and then just one other point of discussion I have. I know it's difficult following the water board, because we never know how long their meetings go. They could be an hour and a half, or they could be a little bit shorter, as of this evening. And I know many of you get here right after work. And it's cumbersome to sit here from 5 to sometimes 6:30 waiting for the water board to end. So going forward, I was thinking of some possible solutions to this. I just thought I'd throw it out there. I thought maybe the first half of the year, we would be following the water board. The second half of the year, they can follow us, and we can be at 5 o'clock. So,
Jim's like, I don't care, I'm here for both anyway.
I abstained from the conversation.
I mean, I just thought I'd throw it out there because, it's, sometimes we're sitting here for an hour. Many of you
Patty
gentlemen,
can get through an agenda.
many of you guys come right from work, and it'd be nice, if you didn't have to be here and wait an hour and a half,
Yeah.
you're already here.
I'm already.
So, but think about it, or any other solution that we have. We want to meet on the same night. It's difficult because we have Jason and everyone who's, Joe who's staying after work and everything else, but
Part of the job.
that's why you make the big bucks.
Yeah, that's what they say.
For the record, I think it's a good idea.
All righty, I'll accept a motion for adjournment. Any motion?
So moved.
Okay. Second?
Second.
All in favor?